Social Security recipients got much welcome news this week. According to reports, Social Security update on Wednesday following the government's announcement that inflation cooled even more than last month.
So historically, Social Security benefits saw their cost of living adjustment decline with slower inflation, but in a turn of events, it's forecasted to go up. According to the Senior Citizens League, a nonprofit seniors group, the cost of living adjustment for them will be 3% next year, which is lower than a 40-year high of 8.7% cost of living adjustment in 2023, but above last month's estimate, with experts warning that this is an estimate and could change in the coming months. So this is really huge news. I think a lot of people are worried about Social Security right now, especially current Social Security beneficiaries, because there's a lot of talk about Social Security being cut thanks to Chris Christie, thanks to McCarthy, thanks to a lot of folks thinking these entitlements can and should be on the table simply because we see more people drawing than paying in. We currently have 2.7 workers for every one person drawing Social Security, and projections saying that we'll run out of the payroll tax and have to go into the trust at the Treasury to pay for Social Security, potentially having benefits cut significantly by 2033, 2032, in the next 10 years. And so this is good for now, but I think people still have their hairs up.
No, I think you're right, Jess. I mean, look, you're talking about 2033, Social Security will be insolvent. 2031, Medicare will be insolvent. And I haven't seen any indication, and you may disagree with me on this, but I haven't seen a serious indication, I'll put it this way, from Republicans and Democrats that there is some type of a bipartisan focus on the reality that many Americans, millions of Americans who have paid into this thing in the next decade more than likely will not be able to take out maybe even a fraction of what they put in. And so I wonder, Jess, if we need to start focusing on maybe a more private sector solution to this government-backed program because it's not working.
Yeah, I would say it's not that it's not working because it's a public-run program. I would say it's not working because people who are in public office have made a deliberate decision not to fund Social Security. We've seen them increase defense spending in the hundreds of billions of dollars. The only difference between putting money towards Social Security would be that there is a trust in the U.S. Treasury where the legislation says the money should come from. It could be very easy for a budget to be passed that would allocate more funds to that trust instead of crediting the accounts of the Department of Defense. We're showing our moral priorities by spending in other places and not allocating money towards retirement. And I'm not saying that it needs to be funded in the same way we fund defense spending. We could very easily say corporations are profiting to the tune of billions of dollars off of workers' labor that would like to retire someday. You could pay for this with a corporate profits tax just as easily as you could press a button and credit the account the same way you do for the Department of Defense. And so it's a very clear moral priority to say we're going to fund these other things, but not retirement. We're going to bankrupt grandpa and grandma while we're making nukes and sending troops overseas. Those two realities are what we're experiencing in America. Those are decisions that are being made by people we elect to public office. And if you think they should be making a different one, I would agree with you. Privatizing retirement and having folks' lives dependent on the stock market, the very thing that is incentivized by people profiting very high, exploiting labor, keeping wages low and prices high, I don't think that's a good model financially when it comes to how you run a monetary system. And also, not to mention, if the stock market crashes, do you want your retirement to be on the table? So I really think we have to change the way we just think about retirement fundamentally as a country.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a fair point, but I think just in terms of China's aggression, we sort of have to put the money that we're putting towards our military technology and potential expansion because of that. But with that said, I mean, I think there's a different way we can look at this. And by privatization, I would at least at a minimum want to give the American people the option to say, hey, if you want to invest your own Social Security for your own retirement, then the government will not tax it. We will not take this out of your monthly, biweekly, or weekly check. We will allow you to invest this as you see fit. Because, for example, let's take if someone were to have invested in Apple 15 years ago. they would be incredibly wealthy today if they were retiring in the next couple of years. Let's look at Tesla, for example. Let's say maybe you're in your 40s and you decide that you want to buy into Tesla and some other technology stocks. In the next 25 or 30 years, I guarantee you'll see a significant benefit. Now, I do understand your point, Jess, of what happens if the market tanks. Then I think in that case, and we could perhaps have a government-backed subsidy, if you will, to sort of protect the worker for retirement if such an instance were to occur. But in my opinion, to at least give people the option of choosing for themselves versus relying wholly on the government, I think would alleviate some of the problems that we see.
I definitely don't think the government should be on the hook to back up Wall Street if we see stocks go down and people blow their retirement on risky investments. I don't really see that as a viable solution. I think the money's much safer when it's being invested in a trust at the Treasury and Treasury securities, so that we have, U.S. government-backed bonds paying for people's retirement. I think that makes a lot more sense as a model. It's a lot more secure. We also see that we have public programs become much more popular when they're universal. If people want to invest some of their money in the private sector and they want to invest in a Roth IRA or have a retirement fund otherwise, fine, they should absolutely do that. But I think paying money into Social Security is a really good model. And I think that perhaps a better way to set up that tax structure would be to have corporations pay in a proportion of their expected wage or salary of the worker, or pay a proportion of their profits into Social Security and retirement based on how many people they employ and what their profit margin is. I think that makes more sense as a model than to say, let's have everybody have the option to either pay into Social Security or invest privately, and then have the government back up that investment if things go south and the stock market tanks. I don't think we need a repeat of 2008 where we have the government bailing out Wall Street if we have another financial crisis so our grandparents can retire. Many other countries simply fund retirement because they can afford to. The only constraint on affordability and crediting the accounts of beneficiaries is, are there real assets they can go on to purchase when those dollars hit their account? So long as we keep production high enough that there will be goods for purchase and we're not in a situation where too many dollars are chasing too few goods, we are fine. And so we have a lot of options here. And by not exploring those options, it's pretty clear that the agenda explicitly is to privatize retirement. And who does that benefit? Wall Street, financial executives, and the owners of America's biggest corporations. Those are the very people that lobby Congress very much. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh, I think it also benefits the individual, though, as well, Jess. And not every single person is going to go the private route. You mentioned bailing out big banks and other corporate businesses, but this wouldn't be a bailout of the big businesses. If we were to have another 2008, it would be a bailout of the American people, which I think most people would probably say that should be the priority anyway from the federal government. And so I don't think giving people the option to say you can decide for yourself where you want to put your money to ultimately plan for your own retirement takes away from those who may choose another option. Give the individual the power and authority to ultimately determine what their latter years of life will look like. And I think that's very empowering to tell Americans, hey, if you don't want to put your money in federally backed bonds where, for example, we can't even agree on the debt limit, for goodness sakes, when you think about foreign bonds, let's say China or another adversary decides that they no longer want to invest in those things, you could also potentially put retirees in jeopardy as well. So I'm willing to take my bets on the market. Over the past 100 years, the U.S. stock market has shown, Jess, to have created the most wealth in history. And I don't foresee that changing anytime soon.
By having a public retirement program, you're not preventing anyone from investing in the stock market or removing their freedom to do so. I don't see it that way at all. And I think many people still do have private investments on top of expecting to draw Social Security. We don't have to have this structure be a trust at the Treasury at all. We can simply have the Fed credit the account with the amount necessary to pay out benefits for all those who are drawing on Social Security. That's how every public program works. The fact that we are framing Social Security as if it is different so that we then now would have more people investing their dollars in a private retirement is something that only benefits America's biggest corporations. There's no reason for those dollars to be invested in the market versus us simply guaranteeing people's retirement according to the cost of living. there's no reason for it. The only reason would be because we have many people on Wall Street who are the owners of big financial institutions, who are the owners of America's biggest corporations, who would love to have more people investing that currently can't afford to make that risk. And so a lot of those people do end up relying on Social Security. It doesn't have to be structured the way it is, but public programs for retirement are ultimately better for workers who can't afford to make that risk with their investment in the private market. And it's better because it's guaranteed, universal, and can be adjusted according to the cost of living at the time of retirement.
Look, Jess, I'm not against any program. I just simply believe in choice. And for the Americans who can take the risk, I think they should have the choice to put their dollars where they want as they plan their ultimate retirement. We'll be right back with more Rising after this.